So we're in our problem area. Today's problem is this thing. See that right there? That's a nasty old bath fan. So that thing has been rattling for a while. The motor's starting to go out on it. It turns off and on now, but last week the motor was not turning off and on. It was just binding up. And it sounds like a 57 Chevy. See, I'm gonna put the microphone up closer to it so you can hear it. Hear that? That's a pretty loud fan, all right? So our solution for this problem is simply that. A brand new fan, all right? The Brown Invent series. It's an 110 fans. That means it moves 110 CFM. It's not bad. I got it at the home center for like, I think it was like $130. It's one of the quieter ones that they make. I was gonna get an LED one and then had a Bluetooth speaker in it, but it's, you know, for another $50, it just didn't seem like it was going to be worth it for that kind of investment. So process is we have to take this fan out, disconnect all the fittings on it, and put the new fan housing back in and put it all back together and hook it up to the vent. So let's get it out of there and see what it looks like up inside there. All right, let's take a look at what we'll need for this project. Very minimal tools for this, believe it or not. Pardon my gloves. It's colder than a witch's out here today. It's like 12 degrees in Indiana, so for some reason I felt like doing it outside might be smart, although I get much better light this way. But so first thing you can use a drill. I use an impact driver. You can use a screwdriver if you have really strong forearms. Yeah, so any kind of drill impact driver, Phillips head, and you'll need a chuck head for the zip screws. You can use a pry bar to help get that box out of there, the housing, the metal housing out of there. That probably would have helped. I just didn't want to go out to my truck and get it, so no big deal. You're gonna need you probably use some wire nuts. It's not a bad idea to change the wire nuts. Those were in great shape, so I used them again. So these are like the universal size ones. You know, you buy them at Lowe's, Home Depot, Menards, or wherever your local home center is. Electrical outlet store. I mean, you can buy them at True Value Hardware, whatever. I mean, you can get them anywhere. So other thing is, if you want, I didn't use this, but you can wrap those with electrical tape as well. A little bit of extra safety. You know, it's a metal housing. I wasn't concerned about it, so no big deal. What else? We don't need a camera housing. So a fan. This is the one I got. It's the Brown, I don't know, it is what it is. It's the fan I bought. That's the most I can tell you. I got it at Lowe's near the job site. Really, it was like $130. Yeah, it's just a fan. It's a 110 CFM fan. You can buy a motor and a new impeller for those things. It comes in a kit. They actually had them at the Lowe's here. By the job. I hadn't seen those before. That would be like, I think it was like $20. That'd be the cheapest way to do it. But I just felt like an upgraded fan in this situation would be a little bit smarter. So that's all you need. You know, you might need some sheet metal zip screws if you lose yours or you want to put more in there. And you might need some deck screws or some drywall screws to mount the box through the holes into the framing. So that's it. It's pretty simple. So here's our fan. So there's a few different connections here. One, there's an electrical connection, which if you don't like messing with electricity, don't mess with it, all right? If you're comfortable with it, like I am, you can go ahead and take the wire nuts off and disconnect it and all that stuff and be safe. The power supply is the switch. So as long as the switch is off, there should be no power to that, okay? The other connection is the 4-inch ventilation connection. That is the pipe that connects the outside termination, which is a roof flap, a roof boot, we call it a boot, and it connects that to the actual fan housing. That's how the air travels out of the home, out through that roof boot. So we have to disconnect that. It's got a few screws in it, some sheet metal screws in it holding together. Finally, the housing of the fan itself, the metal housing that holds the motor and everything else, that is connected to the framing of the house. So what we've got to do is we've got to go backwards from this thing. So we're going to disconnect the flap, the cover that has a separate light connection. We're just going to unplug that because it's just a regular plug-in, 110 plug-in. And then we're going to take the fan housing out. And as we take the fan housing out, we'll pull it down, and you're going to see when we do that, there's going to be the pipe that comes with it, and we'll disconnect that. So I'm going to try and use a screwdriver in this because I know not everybody has, you know, a full, huge, gigantic set of DeWalt tools like I have from my company. It's not really applicable to everybody. So we're going to see if we can get this out with a screwdriver. It's just 2 drywall screws connecting that housing to the framing, so I think I can get it out with a Phillips head on my screwdriver. So I already took the light cover off. And I took the center screw out of this housing, out of this light housing, and all it does, it just unplugs. See, it's a regular 110. There's a little outlet in there, and next to that's connected to the motor, and that's how that powers that. So that's that comes off. You can see how nasty that thing is. This thing is 12 years old, so it's probably time. So you're gonna see there's a double outlet. So there's a double outlet. So there's another 110 connection right there that's for the motor, all right? And then there's clips on both sides of this thing that hold the motor housing in place. We're gonna disconnect those clips and fold the motor housing out. So that's the motor housing. You can see how it's got a motor, it's got an impeller blade that actually draws air out. It's got a simple motor, magnetic based electromagnetic motor like 90 million motors in the United States. So it's a very simple setup. You can actually buy a new motor and a new impeller for these things. I just want to upgrade the fan because it's so loud, it vibrates so much. So this is out. Now we have to get our box out. Right? That screw's pretty tight. I'm gonna have to go get my my impact driver to back this one out. All right, so I got my housing loose. You can see here, it's my wire whip. All right, it's very simple setup. There's a light and there's a dark wire. So you want to match all the colors. So black and black, there's a blue one here because it's a fan-like combination. The new fan is just a fan, so there'll only be one black wire on the new fan. There's two dark wires that go to my hot, which is black. There's two white wires that go to my neutral, all right? So I'm gonna disconnect those. Before I do though, I'm gonna make sure everything is dead. All right, this is called a Wiggies. It's a voltage detector, it's not a voltage reader. So it tells you if there's power in something, but it doesn't tell you how much. It's just really kind of a cheat tool. These are great, they're like 20 bucks. You can get them at any of the home centers. They're great, you can see. All right, so you just turn it on. So the hot's hot, and the neutral's not carrying any power, which is the way it's supposed to be, all right? So let's turn on the light and see what happens with the Wiggy. So we've got the power turned on. See that? So that's how you know if your power's on. If you can get one of those for 20 bucks, that'll save you a lot of headaches. You don't even have to go down and turn off your breaker and figure all that out. Just touch it on there, and then watch what happens when I turn the light off. See, now we know we're safe. There's no power. So I can safely disconnect these now. So we have what's called a Romex connector on the housing of the fan. It is actually just a clamp that holds the wire in place. There's no electrical connection to it, but it holds the wire to the housing of the fan. So I'm going to remove that so I can reuse it again. All right, so this is our power wire. This is our, the red doesn't get used in this. It's set up for a double fan or for a double system. It's a single system. We won't use the red at all. There's a ground on it as well, and a neutral white and a hot black. So we're going to use the hot and the black and the ground. The red will just be capped off. Now, finagling the box, the housing box, out of the hole is not always easy. So you kind of have to twist it and turn it and make sure you get it without damaging your drywall too much. The key is not to have to do a drywall repair here as well. So I just push the wire up out of the way. Of course, there's insulation everywhere. It's just the way it goes with the house. So that's our old housing box. You can see it's just got nasty and it's just old. This is our connection for our vent fan right there. So that'll point out to the fan. You can see up here, it's kind of messy, but there's the pipe. So I'll put the new fan and connect it onto that after I get it opened up. All right, so slight complication, which the world is full of them, right? My hole for my old fan is smaller than the housing. So what I've got to do is I've got to make this hole bigger, all right? So I've got a ceiling joist up against here. You hear me tapping it going this way? I'm not going to cut that out. That would be foolish. So I'm going to make my hole bigger in two directions, this way and this way. And I'm going to just set the top of the fan up against my hole and just trace it and then cut it out. Very important that you orient your ventilation opening towards your pipe connection, all right? So my pipe connection is towards the outside wall here. So I'm going to orient it that way. So now for my drywall cut, I want to make sure there's no wires in the way. I've got that my primary wire, power wire, tucked away so it's out of the way. I'm going to use this. It's called a keyhole saw. Everybody see that? Real simple. It's about $8 at Lowe's, or very simple saw. You can use a sawzall, power sawzall. You can use a Dremel tool. You can use a little buzz cutoff tool, an oscillating tool. You can use a hacksaw with no handle on it. You can also use the sawzall blade. You just put some duct tape around the bottom of it for a grip so you're not grabbing the teeth, and that'll work too. So let's get this part cut out. So I got my hole cut out proper size. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to connect my pipe, my vent pipe, to my adapter. All right, it came with it. Follow the instructions in your fan because they're all kind of a little bit different on how to assemble the actual fan itself. Mine had me take the housing, the fan housing, take it apart from the blower motor, and that goes in after I install the box. So I want to hook up my vent first and then my electrical right after that. So I've got these machine screws. These are called sheet metal screws or zip screws. We just take those. This is a double lined vent fan or vent pipe. It's got a plastic liner with metal wire on that side, and it's got an insulated outer layer with a vapor barrier on it. It just makes sure that no moist air turns into water in the cold attic in the winter, or conversely in the summer as well, vis-a-vis. So I'm going to connect this to this now. When I install this pipe, the thin pipe, the inner layer, I want to make sure that the wire is stuck underneath one of my machine head screws. It holds it super tight in place. It's really the best way to do it. I don't use duct tape on these things. I mean, I do use duct tape on HVAC stuff, but the reason I don't use duct tape on this is because, one, it dries out so quickly it's not effective, and two, people rely on just duct tape. They won't use screws. I see some guys use zip ties. I don't like the zip tie method. It traps a little bit of air. It's good for ventilation, but it doesn't hold stuff in place. All right, so part two, I need to run my wire from up here, making sure the switch is still off before I touch it, and terminate into the housing with a Romex connector. Romex connector is on the end of the wire, and it's got a special nut on it. I'm digging in my pocket for it. It's got a special nut I'm going to connect to it, all right? All right, so I don't have a whole lot of room to play with on this particular setup because my wire is a little bit short, and that's kind of part of the deal with some of this stuff. Short wires and things of that nature are part of the, sometimes a part of the bigger problem. But I got a little bit in there. I think I can make it work. The Romex connector needs to go over the wire, not just the colored wire, but also the insulation of the bigger wire as well, of the whole wire, and get it really tight so it doesn't move around. All right, so my Romex connector is on my wire, but it's not connected to my box yet, all right? That's where this little bad boy comes into play. I'm going to insert the fan up into the hole. I'm just going to hold it up there, and that Romex connector, the male end of that Romex connector, is going to come through the female end of my box. All right, once that does, then I can slip this over the wire and tighten it down. This is probably one of the more challenging parts of this project, getting everything jammed in there to fit. There we go. Maybe. All right, so the fan's in there, all right? I've got my wire, I'm good there. So now what I'm gonna do is I wanna get my fan in position, and there's some screw holes on this side that I'm gonna put screws into to mount the box to, all right? So my housing's installed. I've got 3 screws in it. One little cheat you can do is you can get little rubber washers or regular washers with a rubber washer on top of it. When you insert those screws, it'll help with vibration. A lot of time the noise on these things comes from the motor vibrating in there and rattling the box up against the framing. So a lot of times you can do that. A lot of times they give you foam inserts to put around the outside if it's vibrating also. I don't think that's gonna be the case here, but I've got 3 good screws in there, so that housing's gonna be pretty tight. Now I can put my Romex connector on with that nut on the back side of that. All right, I got it on there now. We want to make sure this thing's pretty stinking tight. I'll use the head of a screwdriver to get it all the way tight in there. I don't want it rattling around. It's a metal on metal connection, and if it rattles, you'll hear it. You gotta take it all apart and redo it again. So I'll use my keyhole saw just to tighten the edge down. So now we have this electrical connection we have to work on, all right? This is where our wire nuts come into play. The red we're not gonna use, all right? It's a simple fan, it's a 2-wire fan, no light. We would only use the red if we had a light connection, and we would have to hook a hot up to that for a separate switch so the fan and the light could turn on independently of one another if you chose to have it go that way. Again, this is just a fan, there's no light, there's no speaker, there's no LED or anything crazy like that. So that, I'm not gonna cut it back, but I am gonna cap it and stuff it up inside the box, all right? So they give us this little housing that goes inside the fan. Obviously, I'm connecting these 3, all right? There's a ground wire up there, which is copper. Remember the rule, green is ground the whole world round. So the green wire and the bare copper wire, which is ground for the main house, are gonna tie together. The black, which is my power or supply, my positive charge, that's gonna go right to the black wire up there. It's pretty simple. And the white, which is my neutral, which completes the circuit, that's gonna be the one that attaches to my white wire, all right? If you have an older house, you may not always have the same configuration. You may have to identify which one's the hot, but always black is hot, white's always neutral, green is ground, the whole world around. So remember those things. So I've got 3 wire nuts. I'm gonna make my connections and put them up there. You can see there, after I connect them and this mounts inside the box, then when I put my motor housing, when I put my actual motor in, I just plug it in right there. So it literally, it's like a 110 outlet in your wall. When it's inside the fan box, I just plug it in right there. All right, so I'm gonna get this hooked up. All right, so this is the last piece of our box and fan assembly, the actual fan. It's a motor. It's got a big built-in impeller. It's a lot bigger. It's going to draw a lot more air than that little one I just took out. So one of the things I want to do is I want to plug it in first and test it before I get everything mounted, the cover on it. So I'm going to install it, and then I'm going to go ahead and set up the electrical on it and get it installed so I can test it. Okay, so I'm going to plug it. I've got it plugged in and tested everything stuffed in there safely and properly. I want to hear for vibrations. I want to make sure the fan is moving well, and I want to make sure that there's no funky smells. If there's something rubbing or something like that, plastic on plastic in that fan that it's working on. So let's kick it on. Yeah, that's drawing some serious air. It's a little bit louder than I thought it would be. Doesn't sound too bad though. I'll get the cover on it, that'll help quite a bit. Let's get the cover on, see what it looks like. Not too bad. It's blowing air, I know it's going outside. It's actually drawing a lot more air than the other fan. I think the other fan was maybe a 50 CFM fan. This is 110. So it's drawing good air. I can feel it. I mean, it's kind of pulling on my hair. That's good. It's going to take all the moisture out of this. Appreciate you guys logging into Lincoln Logs TV. We're growing. We're trying to do good things. If you like what you see here, give me the thumbs up button. If you really like the content of the channel, hit that subscribe link. There'll be a little watermark on these videos now. So just hit that bad boy. Hit the subscription. We really appreciate it. Appreciate any kind of feedback you guys have. And yeah, little simple DIY project at home you can do. Thanks for logging in. I'll see you guys next time.